Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Training, Learning, and Development community, or good afternoon. Happy Friday to you. Thanks for joining us today. We have a great TLD cast scheduled for today. I'm very excited for this one. This is going to be sort of the first in a series of things that I'm doing that are related to that feedback tool that I built a couple weeks ago. Actually, I wanted to put a link in chat for this one. If you guys remember, if you saw it in one of the newsletters that I sent out, was a couple weeks ago, I had shared a little mechanism or widget that I plugged in that asks for more feedback from the community about the topics, the types of conversations that we should have, the content that the community can produce. And this was one of the top ranked things. It was the top 5 skills that instructional designers need. And so here we are with this, and I'm going to continue to use that feedback tool. I put a link to it in the chat. Check it out and feel free to participate in that and add that to something that you check out regularly, because that is going to be a big driver for how I do things going forward. I think that when I think about how I do things with TLDC, it's like, it just makes sense to have the community decide more about the direction of the conversation versus me trying to, figure it out, because, it just, I would rather have your voices here than me just trying to come up with stuff. But with that, here we are in this session today, and I'd like to introduce you to Bethany Kline and Cyndi Nagel, who is going to be part of the conversation and helping me out with with the presentation today. We're going to be getting their insights as well. So welcome to the panel, you guys. Thanks for taking the time to do this morning. I really appreciate you. And actually, why don't we start out, Bethany? Why don't you give us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good morning from the Seattle area. It's 8 a.m. where I am, so I'm drinking tea. So my name is Bethany. My pronouns are she and her. I'm an instructional designer at Convoy. Convoy is a digital freight network, so we're a tech startup in the Seattle area trying to disrupt the freight industry. And I had no experience in the freight industry before joining Convoy, so it's been really fun to learn about the industry. I'm an instructional designer on the people team, so I'm developing learning solutions for company onboarding and kind of, employee development generally. It's been really exciting. In the past few months, we've had a few other instructional designers join in different orgs in the company. So I'm not the only lonely instructional designer at the company, but excited to chat with you all about ID skills.
Nice. Thanks, Bethany. And Cyndi, you're over at Belkin.
I am. Yes, I'm a training development manager at Belkin International. We're a consumer electronics manufacturer, global company. I am a team of one. So, for a global company, we don't have a large training department. So I call myself the Jane of all trades when it comes to training, instructional design. I do it all. I do get some support with an internal marketing team and some assets, but for the most part, I do all of it.
Wow. Wait, Cyndi, for Belkin, you're this lone instructional designer from Belkin who I buy like lots of accessories I've purchased that are Belkin branded.
This is it. Yeah. So when I say all of it, I mean all of it. We have an LMS I have to administer. I'm designing. I'm creating content. I do use a lot of off the shelf to supplement, and keep up with the demand. But, I do create courses as well. So yeah, a little bit of everything.
Amazing, Cyndi. All right. Thanks. I think that your insight is going to be especially helpful for this one, because we have a lot to go over, and it sounds like you're somebody that probably needs like all the skills that are listed in this crazy survey that I put out. So for those of you that might not know, this survey went out, I guess, earlier this week. And right now, as far as the survey itself, I have 805 responses to the first question about the top skills that you believe instructional designers need. And I think we're just going to jump into it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to take a look at what the results are. Now, if you look at the top of the chat there, there's a survey.query.com link. That actually is a link that goes to the responses as well. So feel free to check that out too. But I do have a couple slides as well to share. So let me get in here and share my screen over here. All right. So if you look at the results for this particular survey, you'll get to this page here where you see the report looking like this. I also have though a couple slides that will sort of give us like the top 5. So here we are. We've got the top 5 skills that according to the survey, and in order, we've got communication skills, creativity, project management, learning technology and authoring skills, writing and copywriting. All right. So I want to know what you folks think about that. And in particular, any surprises? Bethany and Cyndi, what do you think? Anything in that top 5 where we had sort of talked a little bit about it at the green room already, but what do you think? Does that make sense to you? This top 5?
These top 5 totally make sense to me. I think the challenge is like, I think probably folks taking the survey had a reflection similar to me, which is like, wow, I need a lot of skills to be successful in my role. I don't think I could dial it down to just 5. One thing that I don't see on this list that I know I put is stakeholder communication or management, however it was labeled. That's something I need to be really good at in my role, because I have lovely stakeholders. They have wonderful ideas, but sometimes they are really like focused on the content versus like, what are we trying to accomplish with this? So I think for me, maybe not surprise, but for me personally, stakeholder management communication is a big one.
Wow. What do you think, Cyndi?
I was, and we did chat about this a little bit before, I was a little surprised that learning models wasn't higher on the top 5 skills for instructional design. It's the framework, understanding how people learn is the framework for it. So that was a surprise to me. But, you could kind of tie that into communication skills, project management as well. So, maybe that's where people are prioritizing that part of it.
Where was it? It was somewhere in the middle here. We had there was learning models. So it came in, I think I said it came in at number 7. But you're right. I thought for instructional designers that like that number 5 would be, that it would be in the top 5. So I was kind of surprised by that. Yeah, Christiana is saying that she was surprised too. How about the order of this? Do you think that communication skills as number 1 is in the right place? Do you think that's? Would you agree? Or were you surprised to see that?
Not me. I'm absolutely not surprised. I think it should be number 1.
Yeah, also not surprised, but also for me, communication skills is so broad. So like, is it communicating like maybe through the lens that I was just talking about, like communicating with the business? Is it communicating with the learners? I also saw that writing and copywriting was down there, and I think of them like those 2 potentially related skills. But yeah, right. Communication is important, but communication to who?
Yeah. And speaking of broad, number 2, creativity. I was like, wow. Okay. So how exactly, what do you mean by creativity when that one, and really when I gathered a lot of these skills, I went through and I just did a bunch of, Google searches, and I'm, for what other people were saying were important for instructional design skills. I went everywhere, and new articles, old articles, just everything. And I just gathered them all. And I'm like, okay, here we've got a big bunch of them, and I'm just going to dump these in. And honestly, what had happened was when I first released the survey, got a little bit yelled at in some emails saying this is missing, this is missing, this is missing. So I just quickly added them. I'm like, oh, sorry. Okay, you're right. So I dropped those in. So I ended up adding them from some of the feedback that I got. But creativity is kind of it's sort of vague to me, but at the same time, I do understand it. But what do you guys have more insight on that? What would you say when you see the word creativity? What does that mean for you as an L&D professional?
For me, I think creativity, you could also consider that a pretty broad category of skills, right? I think about creativity, not necessarily like, I think one way you could think about it would be being like original or innovative, but for me, it's kind of relational. So creative compared to the baseline, whatever context you're in. I've said this before, I've never considered myself a creative individual until I really got into L&D. So I think it's just about, creativity is just about doing something a little bit different than maybe the norm. Like that could be creative, where I think when I hear a lot of folks talking about creativity, especially in my organization, it's like, it has to be like out of the box. No one's ever heard of that before. And it's like, well, I think we've thought about most of the ideas that exist. So it's really just about being a little bit different in a way that's intentional.
Right.
For me, creativity maybe is, just because when you're actually designing, there are constraints that you may have within the tool that you're using and things like that. So maybe it's really pushing the boundaries of what the constraints are in the tool that you're writing in or creating in, so I do get that. And I definitely am somebody who kind of keeps a list of places to go for inspiration, so that's definitely up there as well. But it's also just being willing to be inspired by anything, a website, a commercial, and just taking note of those situations and looking at the world around you in the lens of like, how would I present that in a learning environment?
Right. And Darcy just posted, maybe creativity is really more like open mindset or growth mindset. And
Yes.
Cyndi, in your case, I'm feeling like you need to be really creative with how you do things, to be able to manage a scale of things that are probably coming your way, and just, so creative, not just in the way of like, like sort of in an artistic way, but even in, just thinking outside of the box and being able to provide solutions that, don't exist, that you just have to create them out of the context that you're in at any given moment.
Yeah, for me, it's a little bit easier because I can rely on our branding as a company when it comes to the training. Really should, because we will create training not only for our internal employees and on the development side, but for retail employees. So not so much. Maybe I'm not creating so much for the customer. Marketing is doing that, but I'm training the retail employee that needs to know how to talk to our products. So for me, it's a bit easier because I can follow the branding guidelines.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. And I feel like Mark and Damien, Darcy, of course, are agreeing with that, and probably feel your pain when it comes to having to like find solutions that are outside of the box.
Sure.
Now, number 3, project management is one that, I expected to be in the top 5, but I feel like within TLDC and sort of the conversations that we have on a regular basis, we don't talk enough about project management. Bethany, like what do you feel like on your skill, as far as your skill sets are concerned, where does project management sort of sit within your toolbox?
Yeah, project management is a very strong need for me in both of the design or the L&D roles that I've been in. I also was just reflecting when I was trying to learn project management skills, like there aren't a ton of resources, and if anyone here has some resources, I'd love to know about them. But no, there don't exist a lot of resources about project management specific to learning and development. And I think some things are a little bit unique, but I do think it's super important, because oftentimes when folks are asking us, like, we're just asking for training, go do the training, like people don't really know how many steps part of the process, like they probably don't even recognize that we need to do a needs analysis or something similar. They're just like, well, we asked for training, go make the training, when there's lots more steps to keep organized. So yeah, I'm total agreement that it's the top 5.
How about you, Cyndi? Project management. It seems like that's something you have to be fantastic at.
I mean, you have to have project management, for us, deadlines around product training specifically, you're working against a date when the product goes live, and all that material has to be ready. So for me, product management is key because there's a very short window between when when the product is ready and all the marketing assets are done to when we have to deliver that retail training. So so if I didn't have a project plan and a work back plan and a way to communicate what I need from some of the partners on marketing or PM, then, it'd be pretty tough to get it done in a very short window. So yeah, you have to have a plan. You have to be able to communicate that to everybody. Taps back into that number one skill, right? Of making sure there's a weekly touch base on what's needed. And if you don't need to have it, you can push that out the next week. But making sure everyone knows where you are in that process is key. And when you need support, when somebody can jump in is key. And that all happens within that project management process.
Love it. I'd like everybody in chat, and this one's to you guys and also to Bethany and Cyndi. Do you have any formal training in project management?
No, sir. Learned through my formal training was, I've been in L&D for a long time. So before I worked for consumer electronics manufacturing side, I worked on the retail side. And my very earliest training was through a company called Langevin Learning. Mm-hmm. And I took a course with them really early in this whole career of transitioning into training. And it was just a basic, beginning instructional design course. And it went through all of the process, a 12-step process for them, which is basically ADDIE. So, going through that course, it was a 2-day course in LA. That's what I did. It gave me a tool book and a process to follow. And that's what I've used ever since.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
So nothing fancy. It's an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And Langevin's a big name too. I mean, they've been around forever.
Yeah. It's a great company.
Yeah. How about you, Bethany? Any formal training in project management?
The closest I got to formal training, a few years ago, I flirted with getting a green belt for Lean Six Sigma. And one of the courses that I had to take was project management. But I think most of the skills that I have been like self-taught, looking through resources, learning from peers. Like if there have been PMs, like senior PMs that I've worked with, I've tried to see what they do, understand their approach. And then I really love spreadsheets. So that's a part of project management that I get really excited about, although I recognize that keeping track of your project in a spreadsheet is only one of the facets.
Yeah. But if you're doing it right, I can totally understand geeking out on that. Absolutely. Let's see. Alex is saying, if you want to advance in your L&D career, learning project management skills can be an invaluable skill. So, and I totally agree with that. And I feel like that's something that I'm going to try to add a little bit more to on a regular basis for TLDC. And let's see. Darcy saying, I didn't really get project management until I had a robust PM tool at my fingertips. Once I had a sandbox in which I could tinker that was tailored for PM, it began to click. And Darcy, if you can, post what's that robust PM tool that you had at your fingertips. I would love to hear more about that one. All right, so moving on, 2 more items in the top 5: learning technology and authoring skills. Any surprises there?
I would have been very surprised if it wasn't top 5.
Yeah. No, totally agree. Just out of curiosity, what kind of learning tech and authoring skills do you guys have?
Currently, I'm using a lot of Articulate 360 Rise when I don't have a lot of time. It's very easy to turn out content through Rise, and our retail partners love it. But I also use it for internal training, employee development projects as well. I also have Captivate, Camtasia. I'm learning Adapt right now. Those are the tools I use primarily.
What are you using, Bethany?
Yeah, very similar. The Articulate 360 suite, Camtasia, and then have been trying to focus on doing tutorials in Snagit. So those are kind of like the big 3 for me, although Articulate 360 is more than one. And also too, like we're a G Suite shop. So like, designing slide decks, slides, that's still part of my life and I'm okay with it.
Yeah. And then the last one, the fifth most important was writing and copywriting, which I feel like is, definitely for me, definitely needs to be in the top 5. I kind of put that up there with the communication skills. But how do you, is that a surprise at all to you, Bethany or Cyndi?
Not at all to me. Again, I agree with you. It's part of communication skills. But yeah, you need to create training, and sometimes you're the one starting that storyboard. And if you have a team around you that can look at it and you can bounce off that language, then that's great. For me, again, our marketing team, that they do a lot of the work on the product side. So for me, it's writing copy for employee development courses a lot of the time.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I totally, excuse me, I totally agree with that. And I think for me, it's actually been a little bit of a weakness. My default writing style is super complex. So I've used a tool called Hemingway Editor that I super recommend, and it kind of analyzes your writing and helps give you tips for where you can simplify. So I know for me, I can't, my default is just writing for grade 15 according to that app. And I just, anyway, so I recognize that it's important because learners, don't have a lot of time. You got to get the message across in a clean and clear way.
Nice. Yeah. I've been playing around, just a side note, I've been playing around with some AI tools, some AI copywriting tools, and it's terrifying. And it's a good learning experience because they do tell me like how much I need to edit out. But it's also like, especially when you're writing marketing copy, it's amazing how much I can actually remove by using one of these AI tools. It's like, oh yeah, this tool is right. This machine is smarter than me. All right, so let's move over to the bottom 5, because I think this is just as important, so you know kind of where to focus your energies. Let's see. I think we went from least popular to like, this is like the least popular one would be the career focused one. So sort of not surprised there for me, but how about you, Bethany and Cyndi? What do you think about this bottom 5? Is this something that anything jump out to you in this group?
I was
Go ahead.
I was mentioning it before we spoke. I was a little surprised that UX and UI was at the very bottom. But maybe beginning instructional designers don't realize how much they will need that until they've created some content and they get some feedback. But yeah, I feel like that should be up a little higher for sure.
Yeah, and I think when I'm wondering if folks taking the survey were thinking, because when I look at UX UI, I totally agree with Cyndi that it's important, but I also don't think I need to be an expert in that skill. I just need to have a basic level awareness of it and try to apply it in, and of course in an e-learning context. I am kind of surprised by career focused. And when I step back and reflect, I think it's because I consider myself career focused, but I recognize that you don't have to be career focused to be successful in the ID role. It's just maybe my personal bias. And I agree with one of the comments in chat about above average presenter. But I've also worked in contexts where we haven't really had a division between ID and facilitation. So that's been necessary, but I think that's more driven by my context and having to work in like a scrappy startup setting than, anyway.
I wonder if there are any sort of entry-level instructional designers that see that above average presenter is in the bottom 5 and they're like, whew, thank heaven. So
Totally.
I'm sure.
Because I have talked to people and told them what I do and as an L&D professional or what and TLDC, and they're like, oh, so you're a presenter, you know how to to talk in front of people. And I'm like, no, that's not really it. But yeah, I was sort of surprised that was in there. But at the same time, I mean, I was surprised that was even a skill that you'd have to consider. But I'm not surprised at all that it was in the bottom 5. How about the dev skills and the media, web and media design, like at the bottom there? Does that surprise you at all?
I think for me, web and media design does. But again, if you're just starting out, you don't really realize that that's maybe important. If you're trying to fumble your way through figuring out instructional design without some course that pulls that in for you, you may not realize that that's important. But so, yeah, I think those two at the very bottom are surprise. Yeah. Web skills, not totally surprised. I mean, the tools have gotten so good. Right. when I started out, yeah, I had HTML books and JavaScript books. And when I first started out, and it wasn't even called e-learning, and we didn't even have instructional design as a designed role, that was something you kind of had to have. But today, I think that there's less of a need for that because the tools are so amazing.
Right. Kim is mentioning like no code tools. And I totally agree with that. Like I'm moving more and more to no code tools, even though I do know how to code, but it's just maintenance. I don't want to have to deal with going back and fixing stuff all the time.
Yeah. And that's the problem with it, right? As soon as you change the script or code, if you have to change something later on, or if there's an upgrade or something, it could break your course, and nobody wants to deal with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see, Kayleen had mentioned something about facilitation in here, but I wanted to tell you, Kayleen, it was in the, let me pull up the actual presentation. Facilitation was in the bottom 10 somewhere. Where is it? It's somewhere in here. Oh, there it is. It came in kind of low. So I was sort of surprised to see that facilitation didn't get much, because I thought that would be a lot more important, but yeah.
Well, for me, I wonder, do you need to be a good facilitator to design the training that will be facilitated? I don't know. I think it's like, for me, is if you're creating like a really nice facilitator guide, if best learning practices are taken into account, I don't think you need to be able to do it. You just need to be able to set the facilitator up for success.
Right. Right. Yeah, and Alex is saying instructional design can be a very broad term also. And that is kind of one of the challenges with, well, not just this survey, but with this, the spectrum of things that that this community is trying to cover. There is like so much that, last community day I did was on stories. Where does that sit in here? And maybe the creativity side or something, but it really is broad. And Kayleen saying there are just so many skills necessary for doing ID. They can't all rise to the top. Totally agree. And Taruna had mentioned we've only, been going through question 1. We're already like 30 minutes in, but I'm going to move a little quicker now. Let's see, currently employed, vastly, of course, most everybody responded yes. Where is their percentage here? Oh, yes, 94.83%. And then job title, I did this wrong. I should have had more of a drop down menu with some selections, but then honestly, I was like, oh man, instructional designer, learning experience designer, everyone's so different now. Everyone's putting in different things, trainer, I don't know. And so I just had it as a text entry. So we have a word cloud to show you of what was the most popular terms. So I don't know, maybe I have the spreadsheet and I could sort through it. Maybe I'll come up with the specifics later, but I just haven't been able to sort through that. Looks like designer and learning are in the top. So does that work? And Alex is talking about thought leader. That's what we are. If you're in here right now, that's what you are. You are a thought leader. Everyone is a thought leader. And then I think Taruna was asking about this one. How long have you been a learning L&D professional? Let's see, the majority 10 or more years. And so that's helpful. We'll have some people that filled out the survey that have been at this for a while. And then we had some questions and comments with this survey tool. I'll just throw this in there. I bought this survey tool from AppSumo, which I'm a big fan of. It just is some they have like a lot of interesting tools that they sell licenses for, and but this is actually for, you can get these NPS breakdowns for this, and it's not really relevant to the survey, but if you guys are interested in looking at a tool that you can get a lifetime license to at a relatively cheap price, check it out at appsumo.com. This one's called Query, QWARY. All right. So let's see. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the screen. We're going to wrap things up with answering some of the questions that we have in the chat area. So let's jump into that now. Going to like upskilling some of these skills, like in that top 5. Do you guys have any insight at all for, upskilling in communication and creativity and project management, learning technology and authoring skills, writing, copywriting? I mean, those are all very different places, but how about just that first one with communication skills? Do you guys have any insight to that? Where would you go to get better at that?
Honestly, I think communication has so much to do with it's really critical in the planning part of instructional design, because you have to do an analysis, right? You have to ask the right questions. You have to ask quite a few questions just to get the full picture of what you need. So for me, I really think it's more, if you can get some training in doing a good training analysis, then that would be helpful for the communication part, because, and that's something that for me, Langevin did very well. It gave me an idea of all the things to consider in a training analysis. And I use, bits and pieces of that depending on the project today. So that would be key to me, is finding a good course on training analysis. LinkedIn is great for that. It's a good source for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say, I specifically would start with LinkedIn Learning. And in case, I just like to make this plug in case folks aren't aware, you can generally, I think it depends on each public library, but oftentimes public libraries will have licenses that you can get as part of your library card. So don't have to pay for it, which is really nice. LinkedIn Learning is a nice place to start, but of course it's very general. So it's really good if you have a resource or someone like to take the course with, or just have like some reflection afterwards, because I've always found, that LinkedIn Learning can be very general. And also another plug for the public library. I found a lot of really good L&D books at my library. I'm going to maybe get her name wrong, but I got Julie Dirkson's, one of her books at the library recently. I was impressed that they actually had it. But yeah. I'm a big sucker for just good old book. Yeah.
And a big fan of the public library. I'm the same way. Like we're there pretty much like at least twice a week, just for kids books for my son. So and it's just a great environment. Totally agree. Wait, I want to make sure. Can you get like access to LinkedIn Learning through the public library? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if it's every single public library system, but all of the systems in the Seattle area, like Seattle Public Library, where I'm up north in Snohomish County, if you go to the online resources section of the site, it gives you steps to sign up for either a Lynda. I think Lynda just transitioned to LinkedIn Learning for libraries, but you can get it for free. Unfortunately, I don't think you can connect it to your LinkedIn your LinkedIn account. Mm-hmm. But if you want, free access, I think it's better than paying $30 or whatever it is a month for LinkedIn Learning.
Yeah. No, that's great. Fantastic. How about any of the other skills? Have either of you, found other resources to help, like even with project management, authoring, writing, copywriting?
The authoring tools. I mean, early on when I started, I took a course on Captivate, and Josh Cavalier was what he did, a Captivate Masters Week. And that's how I learned how to use Captivate, and came out of that with not only tips on how to use the course, but creating video for e-learning and all kinds of other, really great tips. So yeah, there's a lot out there. Tim Slade is doing a great job. He's definitely somebody I would recommend. Devlin Peck is doing a great job. There's some really good peers in the industry that you can go to that are sharing their knowledge.
No, that's great. Those are great resources. I love how we're putting Devlin Peck and Tim Slade in the same conversation as our local library. So
Yeah, absolutely. Those guys are great, and they share a lot. And there's so many people that we could plug, really.
yeah. So let's see. Now I did have one question that was from the survey, and it was, since it was anonymous, I don't know who had actually asked that question. Hopefully they're here in the chat, but the question was, I have been a designer and developer for the last 10 years. However, since development isn't expected for all ID roles, I'm curious to know how many IDs do both and how many are purists and employed just doing the design portion. My answers to the survey assume the ID as a designer only, not as a developer, because while both are possible, I believe you need to be a strong designer first, or you will develop a poor course, even if your software skills are stellar. So I created a poll for that, kind of related to that. As an L&D professional, my role primarily focuses on, and then put design development both. So if you haven't already, if you could answer what your reply would be in the poll, that might be a little bit helpful. It looks like right now, overwhelmingly, people do both, 66.7%. But yeah, and we had talked about this a little bit in the green room as well. Bethany, what do you have to say about this one?
Yeah, I was sharing before, like I didn't immediately know what the difference was. So I Googled it. I came across one resource and I can put the link in. I've never looked at this blog before, so I don't know about the accuracy, but they made the distinction that design is like actually designing the course, and the developer is the person who's responsible for the higher level strategy and making sure that the learning is aligned with like higher level goals going through ADDIE. I've always been in the position where I'm trying to like working with stakeholders, like, okay, what's the goal of this? How is this going to link back to our business? What are we expecting? Like, what does success look like? And then from there, dialing into like, what are the specific skills or knowledge pieces? So to be honest, didn't even know that there could be a difference.
Yeah. And Kim, actually, she had a comment to this question that I think is relevant. She said, this is a little confusing to me because for us, ID is planning strategy and writing. Design means graphic design, and development means working in the authoring tools to publish the course. So a bit of apples, oranges in terms. And I totally agree, Kim. It's I think that there's different directions this one can go. And it's good because this one, Lisa Crockett actually was the one who asked this question. So, and Lisa's in chat right now. Let's see. What do you think about this, Cyndi?
I actually agree with Lisa. She says, I'm thinking of a developer as a literal developer, the media portion. And then someone else below says, design up until the storyboard, develop was through delivery. So the process to getting to the storyboard is part of that instructional design process. I agree with that, definitely. The person who's designing the engagement, the interactivity, that's all in the storyboard. And then once that storyboard is approved and done, then it's development, then it's building it, so you might have some people storyboard though within the tool though, right? As part of the instructional design or storyboarding. So it really just depends on what your organization does. But I do like that breakdown of like the design, is done when the storyboard's approved, and then you're building the actual product.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
And it really kind of just speaks to the role too. Like, just there's so many different directions all of this can take. Like, like I was saying earlier, I work for a tech company. And so when you talk about design and development, they are definitely just sort of specific things. But, but I work in an environment that I would say is more Silicon Valley focused. So it's like when you talk about development, you're talking about a team of programmers that are, sitting in a room, just head down, just typing away at building stuff that way. So it's a whole different things. And then I got one last question here. What skills are required to work well with SMEs? And this one is sort of, this one was in the survey too, just sort of.
All of them. I agree.
I mean, yeah.
Okay, we want the answer. You got Cyndi and Bethany are going to tell us right now what the skills are.
Patience. That wasn't on the list. It's absolutely true. Communication is the number one for sure, because part of communication is listening and, asking the right direction, directing the conversation, and be nice and smile. All those things. It's keeping the meetings with SMEs focused. So part of that's meeting planning too, and being able to manage the meeting and keep people on track and not let it get off, track, and bringing the conversation back to the plan and the goal. So,
yeah, for me, in my context, I don't, what comes to mind honestly is coaching skills. Because sometimes folks are asking for training and they don't actually know like why, what's the reason, or, of course, like maybe training isn't the solution, but I think like the skills that you need to be a good coach are really important.
So where have you gone, or what have you done to upskill in working with SMEs? Has there been anything in particular that has been helpful for you to be able to tackle that one?
Honestly, Kathy Moore's action mapping framework is like my go-to. I'm actually like at 9 o'clock, I have a meeting with a stakeholder, and we use Mural as our virtual collaboration board. I've created an action mapping template, and we're going to go through the template with the training request. And that framework is so helpful for centering people on what the goal is.
Love it.
Yeah, I was going to suggest exactly the same. In fact, I have my map book right here on my shelf. There it is. So plug for Kathy Moore.
Wow. All right. Excellent. Let's see. And Alex was saying, where did he? Oh yeah, there it is. Sometimes be willing to kill your darlings to get what you want. That sort of that speaks to the challenging too. Oh, okay. So, and I think that's pretty much it. I just want to wrap it up. Anything else that, in summary, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this one transcribed. There is a lot of great information in this particular conversation. So this one I think is going to be a good one to share out. I want to leave all of you with this. If you can, that feedback tool that I shared earlier, please feel free to participate in this one. I'll paste it in again so that if you have any ideas about what you want to do, and would like to see covered by the community, feel free to drop that in there. There's some really incredible ones in there. Nick Floro submitted a project show and tell. There were some other ones that he had submitted as well that I'm going to tackle. I actually feel like I need to write like personal thank you notes to everybody that's added something to this feedback tool, because every single one I'm like, ooh, that's good, that's really good. But it's I think I'm going to finally hit up Alex Godinez for some help here to start bringing this stuff to reality here and make some of these conversations happen. So Bethany, Cyndi, thank you so much for participating today. I really appreciate it. Would love to have you on again at some point. Bethany, where are you? I had you up on screen. You're in one of our member showcases. So if you want to learn more about Bethany, you can find her in a member showcase. And Cyndi, we should have you on as a guest as well soon. I would love to talk more and learn more about what you do. And with that, thanks everybody. Happy Friday to you again. Thanks for joining us today. And we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.